You know, what do you think overall MMA fighters nowadays? Some of the UFC champions.
Some of them are very good. Some are retired. People like Randy Couture. To me, in his time, he was the best at his weight. And, you know, I like people that are not only good, but they're nice people. And Randy Couture is one of the best. And a lot of them are real nice people. But none of them are pretty like me or you.
Or as mean. Nice guy, but don't piss him off. I've heard stories of you taking out guys that were trying to rob your car, trying to rob your dirt bikes. So even nowadays, I don't want to mess with you, Uncle Gene. I was wondering, how did it come about that you ref the Muhammad Ali versus Antonio Inoki match? And what was that like?
There were 200 people that wanted to referee that because it was big, it was international, it was televised on pay TV all over the world. And when Ali first fought for my mother at the Olympic after he was an amateur, and she made him wear a button that says, "I'm the greatest." He says, "Mrs. Eaton, I'm sorry, I couldn't wear that. What would people say?" She says, "I don't care what they say if you sell boletos, tickets." And so he wore this and he ran from the Olympic 18th and Grand to 3rd Street, which was the gym that everybody worked out with, called Main Street Gym, and he got a lot of copy. Then he said he wanted to go to the wrestling matches and see the interviews from Freddie Blassie. He called him Gorgeous George, but Freddie Blassie was not Gorgeous George. So Freddie says, "I'll annihilate, mutilate, assassinate that lounge lizard. The lounge lizard, you hear me?" And Ali said, "I want to be just like him." So he gets on television and says, "My opponent's a bore. I'm going to knock him out in 4. And I says, "Ali, I know you boxers, you lie a bit." Because he said he could knock him out in 1. You got to go 4 rounds and then knock him out. And of course, I like tease and everything. He went 4 rounds, guy never touched him. 4th round, bam, he was out. And after that, he started predicting every fight and putting on these little shticks and selling tickets.
Yeah.
And he says, "I want Gene as the referee." And so Gene made $5,000, and Inoki made $2 million, which was a lot of money. And Ali made $6 million, which is still a lot of money.
Now, you've mentioned Carl Gotch and Luthez. What about some of these old catch wrestlers, and what do you think that differentiates kind of the catch style technically and attributes and their goals of grappling versus like nowadays, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is so popular and common. What do you think the difference is of the kind of catch style, catch kind of style of doing things?
They have much in common. The Brazilian style is copied after a lot of the old pro wrestlers, the legitimate shooters. And I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's great, and the participants are fantastic. But they say they know the Kimura. Well, I'm going to tell you, and you won't hear it anyplace else, where did the Kimura come from? There was a gentleman, All Japan Judo champion, and he won all his matches. Then they kicked him out of Japan in 1955 because he was professional and taking money, and they wanted to keep him amateur. So he went down to Brazil and beat everybody with a double wrist lock, downward arm crank. And they couldn't pronounce double wrist lock or downward arm crank, so they called it the Kimura. So now you know where the Kimura comes from. How about the guard? If you know what the guard is, where a man's between your legs. It was called foot and leg control, where you control the man or your opponent's feet, knees, usually below the waist, but you can go into triangles and everything. They have omoplata, which is a chicken wing, and they're all pro wrestling holds, but they were not invented by you, me, or the Brazilians, or guys from the United States. They're all old pro wrestling holds, the legitimate shooters. Okay?
There's not that many real hookers, real shooters left nowadays. There's yourself. What do you think of some of the other guys?
Well, there's some good ones, but most of the good ones have died out because they're older.
Luthez gave you a cauliflower ear Iron Link award.
Yeah, Luthez he could shoot. I did a book they sell. The last time he was on the mat with me, about 6 weeks before he passed away, and he was like 86, and he and his wife Charlie, great gal, and she's still around. He was unbelievable, and you don't see him anymore. They just are non-existent. If you want to see good ones, you gotta turn on the MMA. But
there's been a hammer lock by one guy. I mean, I think some of these holds, and even I'm sending some my DVD to some of the UFC fighters. Some of these more rare old-time holds, I think can start making a comeback. Even just the way of doing the double wrist lock and turning the wrist out.
Oh yeah.
Or if the guy is defending by holding his arm or his shorts.
Carl Gotch taught me the thing where you break a guy's wrist, elbow, and shoulder doing downward arm crank or double wrist lock, which they call on television the Kimura. It doesn't matter what they call it as long as you can do it.
And so hopefully all these MMA guys will start to learn before kind of this, some of these techniques get lost to antiquity. Hopefully, some of these MMA fighters will pay attention to what's come before them and pick up a few things. There's some things out there that haven't really been used so much yet.
One of my teachers was a great hooker, not in the kind they have dresses. That's the old wrestling term, hooker or shooter. And he showed me Egyptian walls. And these old professionals that got in, they were professional then, and they showed different leg locks and neck locks. And as years go by, you see paintings of people doing holds, and some that just didn't work. But I love the finishing hold. A good wrestler, MMA fighter, if they can do it now. In MMA, you not only have to learn wrestling, you got to learn wrestling, grappling, Kempo, Shotokan, Taekwondo, boxing, Muay Thai. You got to learn all the martial arts. Not all of them work for you, but if one hold that you learn from anything like boxing, you might use it. So in our teaching here at Hyaston, which is gokar.com, that's where I teach Monday nights, we teach a combination of everything.
And that's why I love training here with you on Gokar and all the fighters that are here.
Well, you're a fighter, but you also do the movies. I never miss any of your movies. You're a classic in your field and a legend in your own time.
A legend in my own mind. But thank you, Uncle G. And I got one last question for you. I hope you don't get upset by this one. If you don't want to answer, it's fine. But recently, Steven Seagal has been in the UFC news because of Anderson Silva and Lyoto Machida. And he was asked about it on an MMA show, the alleged incident with you choking him out. And he said about you, and I quote, he said, if he is saying that, he is a pathological scumbag liar. Now, I don't know if you want to address the incident at all, or maybe you're legally not allowed to talk about it, or if anything happened.
We'll put it this way. Steven Seagal, if brains were measured in Cadillacs, he'd be on roller skates.
I mean, these were not nice words, and this was just about 2 months
Well,
ago.
the
So
guy lives in the land of Fantasia. He's a good martial artist, but he insulted a few guys that threw in the gauntlet, and he claims he taught different people holds that are standard holds, and he's an interesting person. He's a good looking, he's tall, but he's teaching Bones Jones or other guys these
standard front kick.
standard holds that they've been doing all their life. But he gets publicity on it. But Randy Couture, he challenged Randy Couture. Randy Couture says, if I come out of retirement, I want to fight just one person, Steven Seagal. And it's a shame he should take some kind of medicine because he's got diarrhea of the mouth. And I say he's a great actor and a great martial artist. And after my incident with him, I spent a few months with lawyers, and you know, he's something. But you know, the whole thing is, if you get entertained watching a fellow like Steven Seagal, sit back and enjoy
These
it.
early movies were good, but I'm glad. I think you kind of said without saying what is, and he's known in the stunt community for hurting people, and everyone loves you. You try to help me out. I'm nobody. Try to help everybody out, and everyone knows that you're a kind and giving man.
Well, you try to help people out. I've been there. I've been damn lucky. I've been blessed. I've made a lot of money in the stunt business. I've made money in the pro wrestling business. And as far as a fellow like Steven goes, to put a person down, that doesn't make me a better man. You know, if I have to brag, let somebody else say, hey, Gene was good in his time, you know, and but you people, you've got to know the difference between BS and legit. And so you see somebody like Steven talking,
Yeah.
I, me, and I, and Rowdy Ronda Rousey challenged him to a death match. Now Ronda is the champion, woman, and Steven's very good, but I would bet the farm, and I've got a farm, I bet the farm that he wouldn't last a round with her. She'd annihilate, mutilate, assassinate him. But that's just my opinion, and that's what makes gambling.
Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you, Gene, very much.
You are the man.
Time to go do some.
Come on, let's get on the mat.
Let's go twist some people.
You got it.